Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the school board meeting for January 22nd, 2025. Let the record reflect, meeting beginning at 5:06. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I would like to make note that all members of the school board are present with Superintendent Ray. We are missing school board member Caroline Warnoff this evening. So that now takes us to item number 3, and that is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor,
School board member Truman?
I move we approve the school board meeting minutes dated January 8th, 2025.
Motion has been made by school board member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by school board member Roach. Any discussion on the minutes? Oh, Jeff, I'm sorry. School board member Richards. Okay, any discussion on the minutes? Okay, roll call vote. School board member Preble?
Yes.
School board member Richards?
Yes.
School board member Roach?
Yes.
School board member Kidder?
Yes.
School board member Truman?
Yes.
And school board member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Okay, that takes us to item number 4 this evening, and there are no adjustments to the agenda. Item number 5, there are no correspondence. Item number 6 is public session. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak, please step forward, state your name and address for the school board, and you will have 3 minutes to address.
Hello, my name is Anne Marie Swenson. I actually live in Scarborough, but I'm the CFO for Thornton Academy. And I just want to speak very briefly about a chart that I noticed is in the agenda tonight under new business that makes it appear as though the per pupil cost for Saco pre-K to 12 students is about $17,000 and that TA is $18,000. And I think that that number is misleading. To be fair, there are 2 separate databases that are kept at DOE. One is a more comprehensive cost number than the others. The one that is listed here is the one that per DOE superintendents do like to use because it breaks costs down into categories that they like to focus on managing. But if you're going to look at the all-in cost of TA, the most appropriate comparison is with the other database. And I do have copies. I've given some to those that are on the Finance Committee. I'll hand out to the rest of the school board members if I may when I'm done. But showing that the actual out-of-pocket cost that Saco paid TA last year is $16,545. We could discuss all day what things you might like to add or subtract to that. The report that Superintendent Ray has put together lists a cost for TA of about $18,000. I will tell you that's higher than we would accept as a number, but for the sake of this discussion, let's assume it's even 18. The average cost for Saco pre-K to 8 per pupil last year is $23,836. The lowest school is CK Burns at 22 and change. The highest is the pre-K program at just over 26. So if you're going to do an apples-to-apples comparison of the all-in cost, if you will, it's important to use the higher number for Saco if you're adding everything you can possibly think of to TA. I know Superintendent Ray and I were just talking. We're going to have to agree to disagree on the math behind this. If you offset some of the spending with the revenue that the city gets, you could perhaps bring that number down. That may be how that lower number is there. But I can tell you that if we're going to do that, we probably also need to subtract the $8,000 or so of subsidy that Saco receives from the state for every student at TA. So I think we just need to be careful if we're looking at all-in expenses. Again, even if TA were 18, which I will say firmly it is not, then we would need to be looking at the $23,000 number for Saco. I will say again, with all due respect, Superintendent Ray is not misstating facts here. There is another database also reported by the districts to the state. It's just not picking up all the expense. So again, if we're looking at 18 for TA, then we need to look at 23 for Saco. So I'd like to hand that out. And again, I'm happy always to answer questions from any of the school board, certainly from you, Mayor McPhail, and any member of the public. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm at TA, I'm the CFO, I can be easily found. May I approach the school board to hand copies of this to those that were not on the Finance Committee?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Appreciate that update. Okay, if there are any other members of the public wishing to speak, please step forward. Okay, not seeing anyone seeking recognition, and for the record, I would just like to state that School Board Member Warrenoff, welcome. Did arrive. And item number 7 this evening is the Superintendent's report. Superintendent Ray.
So we've had, well, I shouldn't say it, but knock on wood, low temperatures haven't disrupted schools yet. But I'm sure that by tomorrow, Burns or Young or someone will have a challenge out there. I just got to bring up my email because I lost the piece of paper that I had. Hold on just a second. So we have coming up in our schools the first week in February. During February, we'll participate in the Department of Education's Read to Me Challenge and encourage our community to join us by reading to or with a child for at least 15 minutes. We ask people to snap a photo or a short video, 15 to 30 seconds, and post it with your challenge to others to read aloud for 15 minutes with your child. Use the hashtag #ReadToMe and tag others. Parent resources will be included in our principals' newsletters. Want to say congratulations to our Saco middle school students who completed the annual spelling bee this month. This year's school bee champion was Olivia Blaze, and the runner-up was Leo Italian. Olivia and Leo will advance the York County Spelling Bee held on Tuesday, February 4th at 2:30 in the library at Massabesic Middle School. And then during Finance Committee, we talked about, you may have seen the article in the newspaper where Maine Housing looks to be closing the hotel in Saco by September. I'd ask you guys to look at that article to get some details. We'll be working with Maine Housing as we move forward over the next year to see what happens. I'm not really sure what's going to happen this spring, and that's going to certainly complicate some of our budget pieces because our budget pieces included some new positions, and maybe students will or won't be here, but a lot up in the air right now.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for Superintendent? Okay, not seeing any. Moving on to item 8, and that is the Chair's report. School Board Chair Preble.
I don't have anything new to report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And item number 9 this evening, there is no staff reports. Takes us to item 10, and that is the board subcommittee personnel meetings. Personnel and Policy Committee agenda is attached to your packet, and the next meeting is scheduled for February 12th at 5:30 p.m. The Finance and Infrastructure Committee, next meeting is January 22nd. Oh, that was today at 4:30. And the Curriculum Committee, next meeting is January 27th at 4:30. Item 11, there is no old business this evening. Item 12, under new business, there is a memo in your packet for new hires, but there is no motion needed this evening. There is a memo in your packet for resignations, and again, there is no motion needed. And item C is a building update.
Okay, the other night, we were able to go to the Conservation Committee and seek approval for the cutting of trees, which we moved through that committee. Last night, we were scheduled to be at the Planning Board, but unfortunately, they didn't have a quorum. So we're going back to the Planning Board on January 30th to hopefully talk so we can get the process of cutting the trees done before April 14th, which we appear to be on target for. So that's kind of the big piece that we're working on right now is trying to get that land cleared, and then we'll go from that process forward.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay, not seeing any. Moving on to item D, and that's a literacy grant notification. And that we've got Meg coming up.
Thank you. I'm just sharing a memo regarding a grant that we applied to. This is for some literacy learning modules that were actually available statewide over the course of the summer, and they've extended that but phrased things a little bit differently, where they want teams of teachers within different buildings working on completing those modules, and then also having some follow-up collaborative conversations about how the content in those modules might impact instruction. And we had actually applied for 4 different teams. They were looking for pre-K 3 teams. So we had a team from pre-K, from Fairfield, from Young, and from CK Burns. Because CK Burns is a 3-5 school, they did not approve the grant for CK Burns, but they did allow our 3rd grade teachers to join either the Young or Fairfield team. And as kind of a financial incentive that goes back to our students, each of those teams that complete that work will then get $5,000 each to collaboratively develop a plan to implement some of the learning, either through student resources or teacher resources as related to that. And our teams are looking forward to working together to kind of see that as a pot of $15,000 that we might be able to use strategically for students pre-K through 3 to better implement effective reading strategies and or intervention strategies for struggling readers through the learning that we gain in those AIM modules. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for Meg? Okay, not seeing any.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update. Okay, that now takes us to item E this evening, and that is the Maine Department of Education 2023-2024 cost per student analysis and the DOE per pupil spending link.
Yes, so worked with the DOE. They sent me out the spreadsheet this year. As you guys know, each year we approve a budget based off 11 lines that is required by law that adds up to our budget. 2 things that add up to what our tax rate is. We put a budget together with all of our expenditures. We have money that comes from the DOE, and at the same time, we have local taxation. When you look at that year, last year's budget, we were at around $52 million in grand sum, total of everything. And then this is a breakdown of the per pupil cost. This is actually what we spent in a year by the number of students, broken down into categories. So when you look at where Saco is at about 347 per student, you can see that we're slightly above the state average in that comparison piece. As we start looking at the total budget as we come forward, we know that this could be a very challenging piece for us. The other thing that we will have to look at this year is we hope that the 279s will be out by February 1st, is what they promised us. And I suspect that we will see some positive in that because the mill rate calculation of the required mill is going to be 6.1. And as I said to us last time, the higher valuation cities, the lower the mill rate is, the more money that comes from the state typically. What we have to be concerned about is that our valuation continues to rise at a rate that's probably higher than the rest of the state. The other piece that will probably be pretty positive for us is that our number of students doesn't seem to be declining like in other places in the state. And so that will help balance off some of the valuation increase. So when we look at what we're spending comparative to other districts in the area, we know that we still have, if we wanted to spend at levels like, say, RSU 21, that is a ways for us to go. However, we have to be responsible here to our taxpayers, and this is a breakdown of all of the categories that we report to the state based off what we spend from our budget to the DOE as audited.
Okay, any questions or comments? School Board Member Roach?
All right, let's get back to Thornton for a second. All right, first question, Jeremy. The regular instruction on this, sorry, says 13,300.
Correct.
Okay, is that just math?
That is Matt.
Just pure math? So if I times it by the number of students, it's the 14, whatever, the million, yeah, okay.
Correct.
All right. Special education, that is a separate payment
Correct.
by the schools, not math. So
Correct.
it's part of our contract to add to that.
That is correct.
Anne Marie, when we're finished, if you,
Actually,
there's any
yeah,
questions,
I
we
was,
can-
I was going to ask you if I can, after I'm done with this question, to bring Anne Marie up. So,
Sure.
because there'll be a key question that I think
Yep.
only she can answer, so.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. They can't hear you on the TV, so, yeah, okay.
So the special ed piece would be what we pay to TA, what we include for any out-of-district placements. On top of, the district has resources such as psych examiners, speech, language OT, that's not a direct payment. So we're really looking at a 9 through 12 cost for Saco. Those are costs that are to the Saco taxpayers paid for out of our budget that are associated for kids that are grades 9 through 12.
Okay. These support and staff support, that low number, is that like an estimate by you guys, or is that a payment?
That would be the cost that we support for ELL students, for the teaching position that's paid for by the Saco School Department.
But is that cash flow to Thornton Academy,
No,
or an estimate?
We own that employee.
Okay. So you're paying that within our budget circles, but for this exercise, applying it to TA?
Correct,
Okay.
because it's a 9 through 12 cost.
Okay. Transportation, it matches our transportation costs?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's because every other district in the area, there's no breakup between 9 through 12 or,
Right, the
Pre-K.
bus route,
Bus route's
goes
the bus
out,
route.
goes to get the middle school students, goes to get the,
correct.
whether the kids use it or not, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, got it, okay. Operations and maintenance, is that just an application from you guys?
That's insured value
From us?
factor.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's IVF, okay, sorry about that. Get my eyes. Yeah, it covers equipment and building, but in this category, it's called operations and maintenance, okay. Okay, all right, then back to Matt. Matt, for regular instruction, that calculation by the state is to pay for regular instruction, tuition, and it does not include food service,
Nope,
right?
correct.
Okay.
Oh, hold on, we'll bring you up in just a
Wait,
second.
wait, okay. And then my last question, I think, is going to be, well, it's what Anne Marie had brought up in public comment, is, Jeremy, do you think, is the 18,000 calculated for TA a high estimate or a low estimate for their per pupil costs?
That is a true expense of 9 through 12 education.
Okay. So then I ask permission if I could bring Anne Marie up, because she said the 18 was inaccurate, but I don't know which direction, so, but I see it to you. To call. Yeah.
Are you prepared, Superintendent Ray, you okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. A couple of clarifications. The 13.3 for MAT does include food service. That is the payment that Thornton Academy gets from Saco for the entire cost to educate the student, all the expenses that we incur, including that. The IVF, Kevin, that 931 is also something stipulated by the state to a degree. You know, we have a contract that is specific to that. That is intended to offset the cost of maintaining our plant and equipment, because the town academies do not have the ability to go to the municipal bond bank for any kind of funding. The transportation number, again, my comments weren't meant to tease out the 18. I said for the purpose of this conversation, let's just assume it is 18. There's over $200,000 that TA absorbs for after-school transportation that any other district would pay for itself. And so if we add the 700, we need to subtract over 230. And again, we can go around all day on the details of what we'd add and what we'd subtract. That's not, I mean, that's splitting hairs. The other thing that's important to know is that in most cases, it's the same bus run that picks up the middle school students and the TA students. So they go out to those neighborhoods one time, drop off at the middle school, drop off at TA. So if TA were to go away, you'd have some transportation savings, but it wouldn't be an entire route that came out. And then the off-site sped piece, there is, I can tell you, the actual amount that Saco paid TA for special education services last year was $2,314.12. And that's as compared to the $3,059. So again, it was not my intent tonight to be debating whether you should allocate another $1,000. But what is important is that the $23,000 number that I gave you does not include off-site sped services. I believe part of how this calculation is getting from $2,300 to $3,000 is that it is including that. So that's all I'm saying is if you're going to add that to our number, you need to add that to the $23,000 number too. So again, my apologies to get us into the weeds on this. That wasn't my intent. So for the purposes of this, even if we accepted the full 18 and didn't deduct for the extracurricular transportation, we're still $4,000 less expensive than the cheapest Saco pre-K to 8 school and $5,000 less than your average. And again, the actual expenses per school go as high as $26,000 for pre-K. I would also say this is not an assault on the cost to educate Saco students. Providing a quality education is important. The actual cost for TA to educate students last year was just over $19,600. So we spend a lot of money too. That's what's involved to educate our kids in a way that we can all be proud of and to offer the wide variety of programming and the high quality programming that we do. So this isn't an assault on the number, it's just pointing out that this calculation that you're looking at that compares 17 for Saco and 18 for TA is not an apples to apples comparison. And that there are two databases at DOE, both of them derived from information that is provided by the district. So as Jeremy said, the 17 number is this 11-line number provided by the district Saco. The $23,000 number is also compiled by DOE from information submitted to them by the district. It's just that it's a more comprehensive number and a more apples-to-apples comparison to what you're coming up with on this page is 18. So again, we could get into should you subtract the $8,000 subsidy that the state sends the city for every TA kid, or should you subtract something from the 23 to get to the 17? That, again, I didn't intend to bring the entire school board and the public into that level of weeds. I just wanted you to have the more accurate apples-to-apples number to compare. And I'm happy to take any other questions.
And all I can
Carolyn?
say, Mr. Roach, is that we know the amount of money that we spend every single year because we have an approved budget by the voters based off 11 lines that I report back to you guys in, like tonight in Finance Committee. You get an 11-line budget because that comprises everything that is raised by public and or state subsidy. And we report and have those audited numbers, and they're reported out by the 11 lines. And so that is the number, because when you look at it and you look at the amount of money that Saco spent, general fund last year of $48+ million, and we had carryover, those numbers come together.
And I would say, again, both the 17 and the 23 are accurate numbers. It's just when you're choosing which one to compare to the 18, the 23 is the better comparison. It's a more apples-to-apples comparison. And Carolyn, did you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to know how many of the students are self-pay versus how many does Saco pay for?
Saco, last year, I know this report says 862, and that's just a little variance. This report is derived from the count as of October 1st. And when we bill Saco, we actually take the average of the number of students on October 1 and April 1. So we actually billed Saco for 859 students last year. But that, again, that's noise in this report because it's calculated on a per student basis.
And Anne Marie, if you feel like that 23 number is the best number for us to use, Maybe you can provide us and the board with your explanation on why that mathematically would align that way. I think that would be helpful for us to talk about at the next meeting in
Sure,
public.
happy to do that. The 23,000 number, I was told by DOE, includes everything again except the local portion of debt service and off-premise sped, and that is the most comprehensive number to compare. If you're grossing up TA's number all the way from 16,545 to 18, we need to look at the total Saco cost net of any revenue coming in. Okay,
Great, thank you. School Board Member Roach?
one more.
So I know the public can't see, they can look up to see that we listed 17,347 as the Saco cost. And there's another site that you're referring to, the 23,000. In your opinion, what's making up that difference?
I'd have to look at the detail, Kevin, but they're both, to be clear, they're both DOE databases maintained on the DOE website, and there is an extract, a line item extract available that ties to that 23, so I will pull that and I can share it with this whole group. And Jeremy, it might be helpful if you and I met, because then we could look at the extract behind the 17 and the extract behind the 23 and reconcile that together. That might be helpful for the group.
Sure. So I believe a big part of that difference, 6,000, is food service.
It may be, and again, that MAT is intended to cover the cost of us feeding our kids. It's the total payment that you make to us to educate our students.
Yeah, but I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're incorrect on that MAT calculation, because if MAT is including food service, gross spending, expenses, that would be impossible, because I think it would be like $5,000, $4,000 per kid, and you'd be left with only 2/3 of that for regular instruction. I think what the state does, and I could be wrong, I think what the state does is calculate an assumption of you're going to get revenue for that food service, just like the public schools would do. But the public schools get free lunch now. All public schools get free lunch, and 9 out of 12 academies participate in the free lunch program of Saco.
They do.
So I don't think that they're giving you in MAT gross dollars in food service.
And even if they're not, Kevin, again, now you're mixing the revenue with the expenses, right? I can tell you it costs over $2 million a year to put food on TA's campus, and we do that. So whatever it is Saco is paying us, the 13.3 is all that we get to try to compensate that. And again, I don't want this to spin off into that. This is supposed to be about making sure that if we're looking at 18, we're looking at 23.
But you're getting revenue.
Then Kevin, that would bring your cost down, right? Our cost is higher than your cost, but you're not paying us for that. That's fine.
Our food is
Yeah,
federally funded, though, and you guys do not participate in that.
correct.
Right, so you're bringing in money from the food that,
We don't bring in money. We have a third-party food service provider that we contract with to put food on our campus.
But
There's no
again,
revenue directly to TA there.
but again, $13,000 going to you for maximum allowable tuition, $13,000. If it calculates food service in that we are paying to cover your costs for food service, that it is not going to be $4,000, $5,000 of that $13,000.
I think we're talking about two different things. What I'm saying is that is what you give us all in for the total cost of educating our
Yeah.
kids. It's up to us to educate the kids, right? And maybe, Kevin, that's part of the difference between the 19.6
Yeah.
and the 16.5 that Saco pays TA versus the cost for us to educate those students. But again, what we're talking about here is the cost to Saco to have TA educate your kids, and 13.3 is what you gave us last year to do that. However we spent it on the backside, that's what we received from Saco for tuition, if you will. Then there's the IVF, there's a SPED, as we just took people through. So this isn't about, we could spend all day in the weeds of this, but this is about this chart being apples to apples. So again, if our cost includes the cost of food, but this doesn't, I guess you're telling me that you're not paying us for that, but either way, 17 is not the all-in cost to educate a Saco student. Per your own data, it's 23. Whatever DOE, and again, I will extract that data and share it with everyone because I think it's important that we all know.
Yeah, but both for the private academies and the public school, revenue and expenses are assumed mixed because that MAT calculation for 13,000 does not assume that you are on the hook to pay all gross costs for food service. It is assumed, just like a public school, that you get revenue for food service. And in recent years, it's been a free lunch program for all public schools, and up to this point, 9 out of the 12 private academies.
This doesn't change with that conversation. What this is a calculation of is how much is Saco paying TA, not what is TA doing with the money. Whether we choose to spend $2 million to educate kids outside of a federal free program, we have our own free program. I think everybody here knows that. It's extremely generous. We raise money largely with donations to fund that. We have something called the Headmaster Assistance Fund. Not only do we provide free meals up to 260% of the federal poverty income, which is twice what those in states outside of Maine have for free meals, but we also do things like pay for eyeglasses, we buy sneakers, we buy winter coats, we do all kinds of things. We have our eyes out on our kids and making sure that nobody is going hungry at TA. That is a very different conversation than what we're talking about here, making sure that we have apples to apples numbers.
I think all the superintendents use this chart, do not add something like food service to the categories, and also TA themselves have used this chart for comparison.
We never used that number because it's not complete.
You have used this chart.
This chart here, the only other
Guarantee
time...
you've used this chart.
No,
Guarantee it.
I can tell you we have not, Kevin. The only other time we've been presented with this chart was during a confidential negotiation with your school board, and we immediately dispelled it for this exact same reason. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison.
No, I'm talking about before your time, too. That TA has used this chart to justify the deal that TA gives Saco. And you've used the comparison to all these communities. These communities have a lot less student body to reduce that per pupil rate. So when we talk apples to apples, we want to make sure we're comparing ourselves to the cities, the big schools, and I've said this before, the Class A football programs, which that's where you compete with in sports, and that's where you compete with per pupil costs.
The only thing we're using it to compare to right now is Saco. All of the other districts have numbers comparable to that 23, and when we look at our total costs, we look at their total costs, not the 11 lines, but all of the costs.
And I think that will be the piece that we'll have to get to, because the 11 lines...
I think this is getting way into the financial weeds for this type of meeting. So the point is, if we're going to use the 18 number, the best comparison is the 23 number. And again, whether food service is in there, I will find that out for you, but it doesn't change the fact that the total, given, even if we were to assume all these extra allocations, is 18, and it's still $4,000 less than CK Burns and $5,000 less than the Saco average. And again, I suspect how we get to 17 is some revenue offsets, so then I think we'd have to take the $8,000 per student subsidy that the state gives the city off the TA cost. But I'm not prepared to say that now. I'd like to get the details and work together on that.
And I think we can get the details on that. The 11 lines is what we're required to pass here at our level. And when we look at those are costs to the taxpayer, built in with state subsidy and any revenue that we bring in. And that is the cost to educate kids. Because if we look at the 23 cost, and this is important for the public to understand, that if you took the number of 23 and divided and multiplied it by the 1,900 students that we have pre-K through 8, that's approximately $45 million. On top of that, we know that we pay upwards of $15 million to Thornton Academy, which would mean that we're overspending our budget by $8 million a year, which doesn't happen. And so we will get the department to, I can maybe get the department to come down or write a memo on this. We can certainly work with Anne Marie and what's in that number. And we will put a transparent piece out there between what are our costs in our budget that are local dollars and state dollars for our pre-K through 8 education and what we spend 9 through 12.
So this will be brought back for you in an upcoming meeting with a little more detail. If you have any questions before that, present them to Superintendent Ray if you have any specific breakdowns that you're looking to see.
And I'm happy to take questions. Call me anytime.
Great, thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
I do actually have a question that is nowhere near the magnitude of what Superintendent just said, but you've mentioned a few times before that you not only give kids free lunch, but also, you know, I don't know, like equipment for sports, things like that. Do you have any documentation that you could share with this board about that?
I'm sure we could gather it, Beth, and I think what you're referring to is a story I told you a couple of years ago when the new Mainers, the students who are largely living in the hotel, all arrived, and we wanted to integrate them into the rest of the student body, and they wanted to play soccer, but they didn't have the gear to do that, so we used those headmaster funds to buy cleats, shin guards, and mouth guards for all of them, so that they could get in there and play soccer with the rest of the students, and that was a huge thing for them to be able to integrate along with the rest of the students. So that's the kind of thing that we're able to do with that headmaster fund. We also have TA Closet, which some of you may be familiar with, but we have employees and anybody else who wants to really bring in used and gently used clothes, and that's a place where the students can just go and take what they need. And I know I have an 18-year-old boy, and all of his clothes that are worth donating always go to the TA Closet when he outgrows them. So it's nice clothes, it's clothes that kids would wear. And so we have a lot of things like that going on, but I can assure everyone that we have our eyes out for our students that have needs, and we make sure to put our arms around them. We have all 200 of our employees tasked. If you see somebody you think needs to be in this free meal program and they're not in it, let us know. And we've had somebody bring a student to our attention at 10 in the morning and we feed them that day, right? There's no red tape, there's no application to go through. We see you, we think you need it, you're in. So anyway, we're very, very proud of that.
I appreciate that information. I just think that this board might be better informed if we had more documentation about it. And it sounds like a great thing. I don't know, what did you call it, the headmaster's fund?
The Headmaster Assistance Fund. That's when we raise donations and get grants to fund that program. It's very important to TA not to have the restrictions that come with the federal meal program. That's another whole can of worms, but for a lot of reasons, that's not the right fit for our campus, but it is our priority to make sure that no one goes hungry on our campus.
Okay, thank you for your info. And again, a bit more information to this board would be helpful.
Sure. Let's see what I
Thank
can
you.
dig up.
And just to follow that up, I think that would be good information for the board to understand about the priority or the restrictions of a federal meal program and some of that decision-making process, because as a tax-paying resident with a child there, I have no problems with the restrictions.
Putting food on TA's campus is much, much more complex than putting food in a public school. And I imagine at first glance, a lot of you can surmise some of the reasons behind that. We have over 200 people that live on campus that we feed meals to 7 days a week. We don't want to be restricted with what we can give them in that way. We have a lot of people that, because of their culture, don't drink milk. And as you know, Jeremy, the federal program requires you to put a container of milk on that tray or else it doesn't get reimbursed. So there's a lot of details behind it. It's just simply not the right fit for TA. But if anyone is concerned about whether or not our kids are being fed, they are. And I would say to any person on this school board or any member of the public, if you ever become aware of a TA kid that you think should be in the meal program and is not, I'd like you to call me or Rainey Menard, our headmaster, personally. And again, it'll be less than an hour before they're in the program. So we want to make sure we've got our arms around everyone who needs assistance. Thank you. I know I've taken way more than 3 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Okay, moving on to item 7 this evening. That's the approval of the shared service contract for 2025 through 2027. Biddeford Dayton, is there a motion?
Madam Mayor,
School Board Member Truman?
I move we approve the shared service contract for the 2025 through 2027 with Biddeford and Dayton.
Second.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Any discussions or comments?
I'm just excited to continue our relationship with our neighboring towns and with SMAC.
Just with Bedford.
Just, I know, just with
Bedford Day.
Just with Bedford, I know, just with
It's a
Bedford.
complicated, it's a
I know.
complicated
As soon as I
arrangement.
said it, I was like, no,
Yeah.
it's Bedford,
Yeah.
but I'm happy to continue the relationship with everybody and go from there.
Thank you. Anyone else? School Board Member Johnston?
I am very enthusiastic about this because I believe it's been an amazing situation for Saco School Department. And we have worked collaboratively. I believe we haven't been in the way. So I'm totally in support of it.
School Board Member Roach?
Yeah, I'll just repeat a little bit, but also from my own experiences, how ridiculous the school administration situation was before we entered into this. You know, at the time, you know, didn't think it maybe only last a year until we got our feet in the ground, but to have the issues that were haunting us in the past not completely go away, but just quelled. I mean, just in my 1 year on school board, but just seeing it beforehand, night and day, and I you know, certainly thank Jeremy and his team, and also our neighbors in Biddeford. You know, I know that Mayor and myself back in the city council days, it continues to be a struggle to try to meet some common ground, but this is Exhibit A of how we can work together and make things better for the entire community area here. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? School Board Member Preble?
I just want to echo what Kevin was saying, but also kind of just highlight the collaboration of the communities, not just through the school districts, but other collaborative things that have happened. Like you guys started that organization to help out kids as well that needed things, the forethought of planning field trips, making sure every kid has an equal opportunity in education, experience field trips, experience all of the extracurricular activities. I think that's a real gift to the community, so I look forward to continuing that collaboration. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes?
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, that now takes us to item G, and that is the first reading of the listed policies. Is there a motion? School Board Member Johnston?
Thank you. I move we accept the first reading of policies IHBAC, Child Find, JLCE-R, First Aid and Emergency Medical Care Administrative Procedure, JLF, Child Abuse Reporting, Prevention and Education, JFC, Dropout Prevention / Student Withdrawal from School, JLIB, Student Dismissal Precautions, JLF-R, Reporting Child Abuse and Neglect Administrative Procedure, JLF-E, Suspected Child Abuse / Neglect Report Form, KCB, Community Involvement in Decision Making, KLG, Relations with CROs and Law Enforcement, and KLG-R, SRO and Law Enforcement Administrative Procedure, which is a recode, and to strike JLCF, which is Automated External Defibrillator. That's a word.
Second.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Johnson, second by School Board Member Truman. Any discussion or comments on the listed policies? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call vote. School Board Member Warnoff?
Yes?
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, item 13 this evening, other information. I do have a quick statement that I would like to read regarding the recent protest out to General Dynamics on North Street. As you are aware, many parents of children at Young School were concerned about the protests that took place regarding the General Dynamics. And as a result, I met with the city administrator, Superintendent Ray, the police chief, Jack Clements, Emily Prescott from planning, and Leah Racine from the law firm of Drummond and Woodsum. Based on the review of the First Amendment provisions during our meeting, our consensus is not to implement any formal policy regarding the protest at this time. If the protesters stay on the city sidewalks, they are protected by the First Amendment. The superintendent's recommendation for safety is geared toward a more longer-term perspective, and that is by adding screening with fence for better privacy, and that will be reviewed upon at a later date, as that stands. Any other school board members wishing to have any other information?
Madam Mayor.
School Board Member Ray? School Board Member Ray. Superintendent Ray.
Just to update on that statement that you made, I have walked the grounds with Chief Clements and have a meeting scheduled with Ryan Sommer to kind of discuss more specifics of actually what would go there if we go that direction.
Perfect, thank you. I will be updating the city council with that as well on Monday evening. School Board Member
What was
Roach?
the most recent protest? What was the most
It
recent?
was 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks
2
ago?
weeks ago Thursday?
It's been multiple or just that 2 weeks ago?
We have had multiple, but unfortunately, the recent events were more visual than they have been in the past, causing a lot of concerns by parents bringing and dropping off at this Young School. Hopefully, with some of the changes in administration at this point, federal administration, they may be calming down, but we can't make any guarantee or perspectives on that, so. Okay, item number 15 is an adjournment. Item 14, there is no executive session, so we do have it listed, but there is no executive session this evening. Item 15, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by School Board Member Truman, second by School Board Member Preble. Roll call vote, School Board Member Warnoff,
Yes?
School Board Member Preble,
Yes.
School Board Member Richards.
Yes.
School Board Member Roach,
Yes.
School Board Member Kidder.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman,
Yes.
and School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to adjourn at 5:54. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.